not seeing your own blind spot does leave you vulnerable to being used in a certain way, but it also does leave you vulnerable to unknowingly using other people.
Yeah,
Yes.
bingo. You can only start to account for polarity when you start getting kind of like an inventory of all the blind spots, the shadows, the ways that you're relying on your external circumstances to give you something that you ought to be developing on your own. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes.
John's heart blast on fucking Molly nights is stuff of legends.
It's truly the stuff of legends.
The big hormone enneagram.
Hi, I'm John Lukovich, sexual self-pres 4-5 link 458 trifix.
Hi, I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual 9 with 1 974 trifix.
What up, it's Emeka. I'm an 8 wing 7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I am a self-pres social 3, wing 4 with a 369 trifix. If you like our podcast, guys, make sure you go like and subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. And if you really like us, you should definitely leave us a review.
So, Sophie's on here for just like a few minutes because Jerry, my Gurdjieff teacher, is going to do a series of public talks, and like we're trying to promo it, but I'm out of the loop about a lot of it, and I figure people might want to hear that there's other people in this group than me. So Sophie and I have been on like the promo team, but more like I've just attended like 2 meetings, and then she's like actually involved in it. But yeah, like Sophie, like are these all just on Zoom, these talks, or are they in person too?
They are on Zoom at this moment.
Okay.
If there is an opportunity for them to be hybrid, that will be shared on the website, which is gurdjieffbennett.org/joining new groups, if anybody wants that information. But yeah, it's these 2 talks that are September 13th and 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern, and they are kind of discussing the fourth way and kind of looking at the art of transformation in a kind of time of unrest and, you know, a moment where everything is competing for attention. And if anybody's interested in kind of thinking about kind of how to work kind of with the opportunities / challenges of this current moment, this offers them kind of a way to kind of think and participate and work, I guess, is like the term that they use in the fourth way. So to work on oneself.
Yeah, these are just like, you know, our teacher is really good. He's, you know, if you're just even just curious without having to like join anything, our teacher is a really good articulator of the work. He's been steeped in it for a long time. And so yeah, these are Tuesday, September 13th, and Wednesday, September 14th, both at 7 p.m. via Zoom. How did they get the link, Sophie? Just through the website?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I'll put the link in the show description.
Cool.
Thank you.
7 Eastern.
Yes, 7 Eastern. Yeah, because we're based in New York. And so, Sophie, I'm going to just like read what he wrote as the description for the talks.
Yeah.
But after, I want to just get your thoughts and, you know, just brief impressions about what it's like to like, you know, get into the work, and if, you know, how you see it is related to the Enneagram because of personality, because people have heard me blab a bunch, but since you're actually a long time now member of a Gurdjieff group, I just thought it'd be, you know, I thought it'd be good to get somebody else's impressions. So briefly to read it, it's called Talk on the Fourth Way, A Path for Our Time, in 2 parts. So this is my teacher's writing. We are in a time of exponential uncertainty. How we can discover hope and an essence within that can lead to unity and change. There is the slowly emerging realization that a new direction needs to be taken. That will not be a continuation of the past, nor a revolt against it. People attempt to monopolize our attention, shrink our imagination, control the narrative. How can we make sure that the urgent does not crowd out the important, and we don't mistake the familiar for the normal? In this talk, we will discuss the fourth way and the art of transformation and change. We will speak about paths of transformation and the distinctiveness of the fourth way. How can we become genuine and awake, discovering the wonder of higher awareness? So that's the outline of the talk, and I think that is pretty brilliant. How, a new direction needs to be taken that is not a continuation of the past nor a revolt against it. And how do we make sure that the urgent does not crowd out the important and we don't mistake the familiar for the normal? So with that, I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Sophie, but I want to get your thoughts on, just like what it's like joining the work and working with a group and all that stuff.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. Yeah, I can just say, this is an opportunity for people who are kind of seekers of a deeper wisdom and understanding of, say, like the human condition, reality, an understanding of the self and others in relationship to the kind of bigger world and universe. I think for myself, I've always kind of been a seeker of, things, the metaphysical, or things that are kind of beyond just what I see and what I can think of in my own head or what I've read. And kind of I'd say the teachings of the fourth way are really focused on kind of practical kind of work and observation and kind of experimenting with ideas and on oneself to kind of think about how we can connect with a deeper self and reality. Because I think for me, maybe this searching and seeking was like a way to kind of escape, I guess, the unsatisfactory qualities of myself that I could see. And maybe this is what can tie to the Enneagram. Maybe these are the traits of my Enneagram type, which Emeka so amazingly kind of shared with me when we did my typing, which appears to be 793.
Yes, 718.
Exactly. Yeah.
DJ.
Yeah.
Very
yeah.
responsible DJ.
DJ.
Yeah.
But I think, the DJ liked to party and to lose, itself for me, kind of not be awake. And interestingly, this work is all about kind of being awake, kind of predicating itself on the condition that we're all asleep, and there are opportunities to awaken. And that might kind of sound druggy and psychedelic, but it's much more than that. It's not, it really is kind of accessing the part, I think, of the self that connects to kind of something higher and bigger, that in a way I would say kind of informs and guides you to maybe access whatever it is you may think you are meant to do, or be whoever you want to be. And it's not something that's ever completely achieved or perfected. It really is kind of, it's in some ways kind of so mystical that you can't even talking about it is in a way kind of
Diminishment.
Exactly, or just it doesn't do it justice at all. It maybe like annihilates it or something like that. But yeah, I feel like I'm here like, and I sound very pretentious, but all I can say is that, it's a great kind of opportunity for those who are curious about like a new way of seeing and being. And for me, that was what drew me, because I've tried everything. Being the 7 that I am, I mean, it would be like choose your own religion / adventure, and when I was young, I grew up in an evangelical Christian household, but I was the kid in Sunday school who told my Sunday school teacher that I wanted to learn about other religions because I wanted to be able to understand why we didn't believe what they believed, and how that could help me maybe defend what I believed, I guess, in Christianity that's called like apologetics or something like that. Anyways, I was like very young, but I always wanted to understand what was not kind of what wasn't easily available to me, like just curious. I guess it's just pure curiosity, but I could never stick with that for very long. And I guess that's the 7. And then there's also a lot of kind of willful revolting against establishment. Maybe that's the 7 wing. 8, like a lot of anger, escapism. But yeah, I really, I tried many a spiritual path, kind of many a substance or whatever, tried many things. And I think maybe all of it just ended up being a good story to tell, I don't know really how I kind of truly found the group. I mean, I have my story, but our teacher says that it finds you, or that those who are led will find it. And I think this talk is a way, again, it's an opportunity for people who are curious to look at it. Without judgment, I think, really without judgment.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are just great. And if you're just interested in the Enneagram, this is stuff that is, you don't need to be a part of a group or anything like that, but it's stuff to be curious about and to know about. And so I appreciate you coming on, Sophie.
Can I say the one last really amazing, cool, coincidental thing? Because I do love this story, even if it is like a anecdote. The whole thing about like it finds you, not you finding it. So I had been kind of talking about the 4th way with Nick Podgorski, my boyfriend partner, because he's also very much a kind of spiritual kind of learner. And we had been talking about Gurdjieff and Bennett and, these teachers and ideas. And we just suddenly wandered in my neighborhood in Brooklyn back, at least 6 years ago. And we saw a little flyer that had information about a 4th way mindfulness group, literally the very thing we were talking about. And it was meeting in Manhattan like that evening. And we couldn't believe it. It was just so weirdly coincidental. And we went there and we just continued to go there. And the person who put that flyer there was John, our very own John Lukovich. And,
indoctrinating more and more into the cult.
Lo and behold, and somehow our paths crossed and there we were.
Cool.
So I just think that's really cool because I don't know. I mean, it is a coincidence. I mean, I don't really look at flyers and kind of follow through with them at all. So that just, I don't know. So I encourage people to join or to just kind of check it out if they're curious.
Yeah. Well,
and that's all I have to say, maybe.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sophie. Appreciate it. You coming on and giving people a look from a voice that is not just us blabbing all the time. And you made a comment about sounding pretentious, and I disagree. I feel like the way you spoke really embodied the 7 in the Enneagram personality. There's the virtues. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the virtue of sobriety. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Who would have thought a DJ would be sober?
I know, right?
Sober DJ. Yeah, the work does it. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
is transcended.
Thank you all. I'm on a little cloud right now.
She's gonna celebrate with shots after this.
Yeah.
Or go to a rave and do some MDMA.
Oh yeah. Then read my spiritual books.
Raise the roof.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna do our usual regular episode, but give Nick love for us.
We will.
And we'll do a movie thing soon.
Thank you. Yeah, great talking to everybody, and thanks for letting me talk.
Thanks,
Bye.
Sophie.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, so What are we for real talking about?
Today we're talking about Missing Pieces Part 2. The call me, David, and Nancy did about blind spots, which this hasn't gone out yet, but the pod that's coming out before this one is the one that you, David, and I did on rejection. Just trying to better articulate rejection. I have further thoughts because there are so many. It's still kind of like, I think it's going to take multiple calls to really refine that. But the original conversation was how we have multiple blind spots besides the instinctual blind spot. For those people who've been listening to OPS, or we had Dave on here of OPS talking about, blind spots and tidal waves. If you don't address certain blind spots, you eventually have something called a tidal wave, or you might call it a midlife or quarter life crisis, where something that's unaddressed eventually builds up and it explodes either in a breakup or some kind of crisis, or that we have these blind spots that get because we don't really want to integrate them, so they just continue to have them remain compartmentalized, which might present itself as something that you're attracted to. Because if you're attracted to someone and they become your partner, it further reinforces that you don't need to integrate those qualities. It's just now your partner.
Like you're like outsourcing.
Yeah. But it's really fascinating to me as, just someone who's obsessed about attraction, that there is like a natural, like, you need this thing, you're pushing away from it, but you're so also at the same time really attracted to it, and it embodies itself in a person that you want to fuck.
So, don't hold back or anything.
That's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
The relationship between my arousal patterns and these personality types.
For people listening, we're not just talking about like instinctual blind spot. We're talking, kind of more general way of undeveloped facets of your personality.
Mm-hmm. Let's do the plugs so that we can, but to reference the plugs, we did a class recently on Dark Arts Academy. We did a class on J-Lo and her fiance once again. What's his name? David? Ben Affleck. One of the most boring, vacant, blank human beings I've ever laid eyes upon. We couldn't even talk about them as a couple because we were trying to do a series of calls about couples and looking at like their dynamics and chemistry and why they work. So Ben Affleck and J-Lo were engaged like over 10 years ago, and they got engaged again. So we were just like watching an interview of them and trying to figure out like, why does this work? But they had like an interesting polarity where she's this bright, bubbly. They're the same type, both Bermuda Sixes, but different instinctual stackings and different wings. But energetically, she's got this bright, effervescent, bubbly thing going on, and he's just like downward, kind of like grumpy, sad boy kind of thing going on. So it's just like interesting to see, even within types that are very similar, which is something we see quite a bit, like 9, 6 relationships, that there's always some kind of polarity.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. Well, so you're doing you're starting to do a new kind of approach to dark arts, like in terms of couples now? No,
just that changing it up. That was an idea that people had. Like, we would like to see y'all talk about couples and look at their type dynamics and that kind of thing.
Awesome. Another plug, Alexandra.
She's asleep.
Are you muted? I think you're muted.
She is.
She's muted in real life.
Oh my God, I've been commenting and stuff. No wonder nobody's been responding.
Yeah.
You haven't said a thing. Yeah. You have been gone for this past 10 minutes.
Just spaced out.
I guess they're ignoring me.
A 9 that's not here that doesn't know that they're not here.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Detachment to disconnect at its finest. All right. What did you want?
Talk about your astrology shit.
Oh yes. Okay. All right. So as usual, I am doing astrology readings where I am looking at your natal chart through the lens of your Enneagram. We're looking at aspects, at placements, at houses, signs themselves, and then correlating them with your particular Enneagram type and stacking. We're looking at the direction you need to go in, certain obstacles that you have that are keeping you stuck. We are looking at certain things that you need mirroring so that you can just own those things and go off and be yourself, be your great self. It's been really fun. It's been a conversational style. I have been learning a lot more about the relationship between the Enneagram and astrology, which, just as a, how do I say this? As a disclaimer, there is no direct overlap. So I know that there are people that try to create like direct links between different systems. Those just don't exist. And it doesn't exist within the Enneagram and astrology. There will be two Virgos or whatever, and they have two different types. So just go in knowing that nothing is going to equal anything else. But it is fun to look at. It's fun to explore, and I think it's been really helpful for people, and it's been really fun for me.
Cool. And how much is that, and where can they find you?
So the sessions run between like 1 and 2 hours, usually, like between that. They've been for $125, and you guys can find me on Instagram. Sorry, my Enneagram account is Angry Enneagram 9 on Instagram, or my personal account, which is I am Alexandra AA, or you can find me on Facebook if you guys have me there.
All right. Please buy my book. And I'm doing a study group where we go like section by section and diving into deeper ideas of inner work, of the Enneagram, of what was going on in my thinking process that I couldn't include in the book. We do practice, we do group discussion, we do question and answer, we have themes. Ends up being like an hour and a half to an hour each time, and it's only $15. You can donate more, of course, if you like, but you can find the info through my website or on my social media. All right. Anything else?
David's Trifix booklet.
All right.
David, you want to say something about your Trifix booklet?
David, are you muted as well?
He's muted for real in life.
My mind is muted. Perpetually. Do I want to say? No. I mean, people keep coming to me with, appreciation and new insights and, just other angles on it and so forth. At some point there'll be a revision and so forth. But I really appreciate the interactivity it's inspired.
Also, that Kristen Oberly, who's been making really good illustrations for the Trifixes.
Yeah, those are great.
She plans to make paintings. It's on her website, and hopefully something comes out of that because those are really cool.
Yeah,
She
those
and
are
I
amazing.
Maybe she and I do a collab on the next edition.
Yeah.
That would
Awesome.
be very cool.
Yeah.
And then for DAA upcoming episodes, we have what was the lady that we typed recently? She dated. Man, I'm terrible with names. David,
Maria,
what was it?
You guys did Marina and Brahma.
No, not we did.
Okay.
This hasn't dropped yet, but David,
Okay, never
who did we just type?
I don't remember.
Angelica Houston.
Guys,
Oh, yeah.
Angelica Houston. She dated
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson for a long time. That was a really interesting typing. We've never typed anyone that has the combination she did. It was a pretty fun call. And we are also planning to do a class on Kurt Cobain because we're gearing up to do a 5-wing-4 special. And so, yeah, well, that might be a clue, but tune in for that class next couple of weeks.
Cool. God, I kind of want to feel like there's some other thing that I've.
You did your study. You talked about your study.
Oh yeah,
group.
and then Josh just completed all 9
yes.
types on what it's like to be you. We just had lunch with him, and it was great. He's our neighbor now. He's like
nice.
3 blocks away. So
that's really cool.
Super easy. So you guys should come back to New York, and
we're just slowly relocating to New York.
Yeah,
all of us
into Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. So yeah, that's cool. So yeah, Josh's thing's great, and I mean, he's not just interviewing people to get info about their type. Like it's without doing a whole thing. We should have Josh on to talk about his reflections on it.
That's an episode. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been great. And so he just completed all 9 types, and he's going to keep going, but they're like really special and
Yes.
really revealing. And Josh is an incredible interviewer. And for listeners, David, Emeka, and I have all been interviewed. So you're like, God, I got to hear their fucking voices more.
One thing I did say on a previous call that it is interesting. Well, it's one thing to hear all of us on a podcast together and we're our sort of dynamic together. It's another thing to have one person like zero in on for an hour plus, so you get to see what that personality is like unchecked.
And Alexandra was saying how she noticed that as social blinds, we tend to talk about ourselves like as objects or like
or it's just ideas or something like that.
Yeah, and that Josh kind of like penetrates that over a time. So like I think we can be we're not as like if I listen to other podcasts, they're much more like more about their own personalities in a certain way. And so I don't know. We don't really. I feel like we go deep about ourselves and don't reveal a lot at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've made a comment about how what we're doing as social blinds in social space is that it ends up feeling like hookup energy, where it's like people are drawn because we're spilling in a sexual instinct kind of way, which is not really sort of signaling or really saying a lot about like who we are,
who we're affiliated with, or that kind of.
It's not really seeing ourselves. That's what I realized. Like we're not really giving people a window into really seeing us, but we're displaying a lot of things that are spilling our guts.
Juices.
Yeah, juices. So people might have this impression that they might know us, but without really seeing us.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Something that struck me was that, the three of you guys, I noticed in all three of your interview, this is kind of repeating what we just said, but you guys do speak about yourselves as if you are only your ideas, but you don't really give a glimpse into like what is the day-to-day experience of being John, of being David, of being Emeka. What is like if I hang out with you for a day, what's that going to be like? Because a normal regular day, like what is normal regular John? I know that's sorry.
Take it back.
We're not interested in that.
But
I can't imagine it being interesting.
That's nothing interesting about what I do in the morning.
I know that's John had the exact same John had the same feedback where he was like, that's stupid, nobody's going to want to hear that.
Totally.
But anyway, I'm getting like ahead of myself now, but yeah, Josh did a really good job at pulling that out, of trying to pull that out of all three of you. Yeah, and I think it was kind of fun because Emeka and John specifically, you guys are so like just locked and loaded and just like ready to blast all over the place. So to see Josh kind of interview you guys in a way where you'd be stumped was just like, mwah, that was just so good. It's like, yes, catch them off guard.
Yeah, he had some good questions that were like, oh yeah, okay, let me look into myself and find an answer to that.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, and he did it with David too, obviously. But David's a 9 boy, and so he doesn't have the.
Tell me what was good about my interview.
Well, he did the same thing. He stumped you a lot. The only difference that I'm making is that you don't mow people down the same way.
David's easily stumped, is what you're saying.
Hey, David, what day is it? Where are you? What's your name?
It doesn't take much to stump him.
I don't remember what I did this morning.
Whereas I might sound like maybe John and I might sound like we know what we're talking about, even though we don't know what we're talking about.
We're very persuasive.
Yeah, that was good. That was really good to watch.
Yeah.
So is he going around the circle, like starting over, basically?
I don't know what his next plans are, but he's
going to run out of hexa types.
I think he's going to keep going.
If you're someone who's been wondering or trying to figure out your typing, that's what we do at Enneagrammer. DAA is basically a school that helps you understand how to see and hear with the types of the Enneagram and to watch us type people. So you can join DAA for only $20 a month and have a full library of like over 40 videos. And you get a discount to our typing services. So you can Google Get Typed by Enneagrammer to order a typing and sort of like get some clarity by getting the best damn typers to help you with your typing.
All right. I think the Josh convo was actually good for getting at some of this blind spot talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he spent a lot of time asking about his sexual blind spot in New York. I remember that.
Yeah,
We talked
yeah.
about it a lot.
It's part of what we're also talking here is that thing we mentioned last time, the last fix and therefore the last center.
Yeah.
in anybody's, yeah.
That was one of
being
the
a kind of missing piece.
Yeah, that was one of the missing pieces that we explored.
That's
Just
interesting.
that,
Yeah.
there's multiple that I've been mulling over, but like the last center, the different harmonics, or is it, or the different object relations. That's another one.
Mhm.
And even just beyond the Enneagram, I've just been looking at the ways that in MBTI, that if there is some kind of polarity where if you're like a sensory type, that I've noticed that you tend to want what your demon functions are, like you're attracted to them. So like somebody who has intuition is always going to be like interesting polarity, like Joseph and David. Joseph is completely opposite to us in terms of his functions and instinctual stacking. So like we made a really good team because he was a social type who's kind of ungrounded, but like a big communicator and someone who comes up with new concepts and puts them on a website really quickly. So, that was a good polarity in terms of a working relationship.
Do you know if like Alexandra and I have different functions or something?
Yes, you guys do, but there is also polarity there. I mean, you guys haven't gotten typed yet, but I feel like I'm getting better. I have a pretty good idea at this point. And part of what is happening, at least what I think that the reason Alexandra is really good at spinning new ideas, especially with astrology, is it's probably save your intuition. So far, the running guess for Alexandra's type in OPS is that she's NITE INTJ. So she's actually the blaster of the group.
Hell yeah. Step aside, guys.
and that John is a different type of intuition user, that he most likely is FINE or NEFI. So either INFP or ENFP. So John does lots of intuition, but it's more like a exploratory intuition. So it can kind of like fall off the rails in terms of he'll go off the deep end. And Alexandra has more of a narrowed down sort of like, I've narrowed down to these concepts that sum up some kind of sensory experience. And so it's like you guys are, if that is correct, then you guys do have similarity and polarity in terms of you're both doing intuition, but you're doing it in very different ways.
Feels right.
Interesting.
Yeah. And if you're INTJ, Alexandra, that's kind of like 5-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah.
Which might have been why you typed as 5.
Yes, could be. I was telling that story again today, actually. This is like a side tangent. But yeah, how you did your first like video commentary thing was on my video.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I came in very quietly cocky and I was like, I'm a 5, they'll see. And then Emeka messaged me and was like, yeah, you're a 9, we could see it in 10 seconds. And David made this 45-minute video being like, oh, you like all the different typing systems because you like to see how they connect everything? You're a 9. Well, thank you. No more questions.
On Instagram, like people will respond to different stories I post and stuff like this, and people have been sending me screenshots from Reddit. And God,
they love us on Reddit. They love us on Enneagram Reddit.
Oh, they think we are like
which is a 2.
What are they saying?
They think that we have the most like depraved moral character.
Oh yes, that's delicious.
Well, yeah.
That's delicious.
That we're
I love it.
toxic bully assholes or something.
Wow.
Okay. And they can't argue with our content, and so they have to argue with our character.
Yes.
And our character, and there's a couple of times people will respond and be like, "What is so bad about them? Like they sound like maybe they're a little cocky and self-assured, but they don't seem, they seem like they know what they're talking about." And I don't agree with everything. But they, that basically are girl boss and gatekeeping. That we make a distinction between 9 and 4 is really the core of we're gatekeeping and we're doing all this other shit.
Do you know the funny thing about people thinking that we're these arrogant elitist assholes is that they still can't stay away. They still are coming to us, ordering our typings, hanging out in our group, commenting on our YouTube videos. You can't quit us. Isn't that amazing?
It was like actually pretty like shocking to think that we occupy as much emotional territory in some people's minds that I've never heard of. You know,
I'd like to say good evening to all the hate listeners. Welcome.
Fueled by your hatred.
Like somebody made a comment of like, they associate with pedophiles, and then somebody responded like, what? and then this person clarified that they remembered in the Curious Case of David Gray story where there was like an older woman interested in you when you were like a younger guy or kid or something.
So somehow that makes me a pedophile.
It wasn't. I don't even think it was you being a pedophile. I think it was just that you were somehow associated with somebody who,
right.
You know, and it was just like the most like extreme misinterpreting, like hysterical. Whatever bullshit, but it was just amazing. That level, that level of idiocy was like all over the place when we were referenced, and half the group thinks they're 8, 5, or 4.
Oh yeah,
of course. Yeah, real thought out there.
Yeah,
it's just this sort of erotic draw into the underworld that people are like, fuck that, I can't look away. fuck those guys.
Crazy. The emotional energy, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, anyway.
That's what we aim for. That's what I aim for. I want you to absolutely despise me, but obsess about me every single day of your life, you fucking Muppets.
Muppets.
Mission accomplished. So yeah, I mean, I guess like what strikes me in terms of blind spot is like I'm body last. And I'm on this call with 3 fucking super body types.
Oh yeah.
And
body type lumps.
Body type lumps.
I'm gonna put that song on this episode, by the way.
Great idea.
Yeah, I always sing to Alexandra body yada yada, and then I say crazy curvy curly cozy to me. She's so body. And I think there is a polarity with us of her being the most body of the bodies. And like and just from like a sexual type point of view, like I'm so attracted to her that she brings me into that body space in that other way too. Of just like, like just squeezing my 9, just like that touchy, like she makes me very like sensual.
Yeah.
Because like, whereas I probably never would have had that in my self-image before.
Yeah.
Of this polarity. Does that make sense, baby?
Yep. Yeah, perfect sense.
What about you, Alexandra? What is your experience of John as a heart type?
Yeah, I was gonna mention that too. That John, I am heart last, and John is obviously heart first, and that puts me. I didn't actually recognize. Well, first I'll say that like, I still have some. How do I say this? I'm still not like sold on the language of heart last or body last, or seeing how that comes up. But I will say that in thinking about the connection that I have with John, it does put into perspective that I am heart last, because that has been in a way my like, I don't know, my like least priority, I guess. And so being with someone that is so like potent in the heart space does bring that out of me, does bring out like a sense of, I've always been sentimental, but like I cry much more easily now, like much more easily. The heart space is just like much more affected, sometimes to a point of stress. But it is, it's been very enlivening. And it's been very like, I've had to, not just in terms of like emotion and image, but also just in terms of identity.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, I know that some of that is 9 stuff, but just also like knowing my identity in regards to how I feel about things. Like, I feel like I have a much faster response to knowing how I feel about something. And to knowing what my like emotional reaction is to something. It still kind of gets lost in the 9 mist or whatever, but yeah.
Nancy had made a comment just, I think it was at the end of the year-end party, that podcast that we did, where she had commented on just like even noticing differences and changes in herself, just hanging out with us for the last couple of years. that she is much more bold about her opinion and just self-locating and being able to find what she thinks and feels about things very much quicker.
And boundaries too, which is she's body last.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's something about that just that might show up in the people that you're attracted to working with. And I think I mentioned Josh, like really feeling a draw towards us. And, there's some opposite stuff going on there in terms of like how different we are compared to him.
Yeah. And I mean, even like, we already talked about this. You guys with John, that John's like heart blast boy.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I'm a big old wet too.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we all meet up, John's the one that pulls out like the heart bazooka and just starts shooting everybody with it.
John's heart blast on fucking Molly nights is stuff of legends.
It's truly the stuff of legends.
It has initiated multiple relationships. I have you to blame, John, for 2 of my recent relationships.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Thank you for those.
Yeah. I'm here to
facilitate love.
You're big old wet too here. Yeah, so what I think is kind of interesting about this is talking about blind spot and polarity and stuff, but it's kind of like Emeka, you referred to getting into relationships with people that are on this polarity. And it kind of brought up like what's the difference between being on a polarity because it's something that's like you need that helps you grow, and versus just like using somebody, because I think all of us have had the experience of people being attracted to us for the sake of using us for something.
Yes.
And then I feel like all of us are very good at just naturally harmonizing and balancing each other out or seeing each other's weaknesses, and in a way that's like that doesn't have that quality.
Well, I think, Alexandra, what you said earlier about like how we're not really bringing people into ourselves, like we're not doing the social, even though we're spilling. I think what happens is that, especially with this pod, is that we are seemingly putting ourselves out there, but not really. So we are, in a sense, objectifying ourselves. And so because over the last few years of all the new attention that we've been getting, this reoccurring experience that people come towards us and are attracted to us, but it doesn't feel like they're really seeing us. And so even in the context of a relationship, I've had that experience where someone's attracted to me, but it seems like I'm a function of this sort of sexual ate thing or energizing force or whatever that's of interestingness, where I'm a function for that, but it's not really seeing and appreciating me as a person outside of whatever expectations are there in terms of what I'm providing in terms of sexual instinct functioning. And so I see that as sort of us as a group. That is something that we keep running into, is like people are like, I really like what you guys are doing and I really want to be involved and I really want to get a taste of that. And it seems to be like not seeing who we are as human beings and not really appreciating us as human beings. It's like, I just want more of this thing, this blind spot that I have that you guys represent. So yeah.
Well, I think this is like a broken record, I think, at this point, but that's like one of the fundamental reasons why inner work is so important and why seeing your own blind spots are so important, because yes, like not seeing your own blind spot does leave you vulnerable to being used in a certain way, but it also does leave you vulnerable to unknowingly using other people.
Yeah. Yes. Bingo.
Yes. Like I've said this before, just understanding the possibility of sexual types not being interesting. And it's an illuminating thing because on paper, you're like, oh, sexual types that do this, they overemphasize, the parts of themselves that are attractive and hooking and emphasizing chemistry and things like that. But there are people who might get those needs met without actually doing anything to develop themselves. So we have seen sexual types who are very fucking normal and that don't really have much going on, but they end up getting those needs met in these sort of like maybe fucked up ways.
Outsourced?
Yeah, outsource.
Mm-hmm.
So you can outsource your first instinct in order to maintain like your attachment to disconnect or your hexad, whatever. So this ideal sexual instinct or social instinct, people are getting their instinctual needs met in sometimes really fucked up ways, which might mean my partner gets to become my source for my sexual instinct needs. It's not me. It's just I'm outsourcing those needs through using my partner.
So I think you're absolutely right, but I think that something that came up, I'm doing this study group, and something that came up today, and I'll try to like not answer something sort of abstract with another abstraction, but probably that's where I'm going to go.
All right, I'll be on standby for you guys.
Yeah, be on standby. Okay, let's see. My book is about instinctual needs and identifying them. And in early class, we had somebody just kind of asked the obvious question, or it's like it's obvious in the sense that it's like the question, which is like people are unaware of their basic needs, and it's like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that gets that comes up in relationships, and it comes up in political shit, and like all over the place is that even if you're like really privileged and you have the ability to meet all your basic needs, you're still unconscious of what those needs really are and how to really address them. Like we have a lot of like ways that we were conditioned to think that we need to meet our instinctual needs.
Yes.
And so, and then those are exaggerated through our stacking. So like maybe, you got the impression that to have that kind of sexual connection and passion, you needed to be really like friendly and presentable so that someone would like you, and then they want to trust you, then they could open that up, right? And it's like you maybe trying to get like a sexual need met, but through like more of a social or self-pres lens, or whatever, or you're trying to find real connection and acceptance, but you're objectifying yourself because you want to be the juicy object that people will, whatever. And so part of the frustration that I see like in relationships, and I see in like, I follow a lot of leftist groups and stuff like this, because I think ideology is an external personality, is people complaining like, all right, once you have a certain amount of your basic needs met, you ought to be like good to go in terms of taking responsibility for yourself and all stuff like this. And it's like, even if you have like all the resources you could want, you're still totally in the dark about yourself. And so part of Enneagram and part of all these other systems is like they're fascinating and fun, but like the value of some of the accuracy that we try to bring that Reddit hates us for is to identify not only your basic needs, but also like the kind of polarity that you're pulling. Because it's not as simple as just like I don't think on paper Alexandra's type and my type would match.
Right. Yeah.
And our types do go a long way to explain some of the polarities involved, but there's a lot more going on, and there's a lot more ways that we like outsource shit unconsciously. And then by knowing our types, like that Alexandra, for example, can become in touch with her own sexual instinct rather than outsourcing it to me, and I can be in contact with my social instinct without outsourcing it to her. And I can be more adaptable and attachment-y, and she can be a bit more hexad-y. We can meet each other. We have this, on and on polarities.
Yeah.
But it's like you need to be able to, like, that's some of the use of this stuff. It's not just, people want like these, like, if you're a type 4 and you're with a type 9, this is what your relationship's going to be like. And it's like so complex. But polarity is a huge thing on it. And it's hard to kind of name what polarity is, but you can only start to account for polarity when you start getting kind of like an inventory of all the blind spots, the shadows, the ways that you're relying on your external circumstances to give you something that you ought to be developing on your own. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes.
That was the gist of what you had, this conversation that I had with you and David about like, I'm that you guys are noticing that I'm really affected by certain qualities in the women that I'm attracted to, that these are things that I need to integrate in myself, and like heart center and sort of self-identity and accepting myself. And that was one of the things I made a point to really look at. Like, I think the thing that brings me into social is to look at myself and say, what kind of a person do I want to be? And even when I look at to really try to see people, it's like, what kind of person is this? And is this my type of person? So in order to see someone, I have to first see myself. I have to first accept myself. And so I have to look at myself on a long enough timeline. And that's what brings me into social, because there's no sense of like, who am I on a long enough timeline? Like, what is my character? And that's very difficult to even sort of like articulate, but that brings me into that world, because I feel like that's what social types are doing. Is like, is this a representation of who I am? How does this look from the outside? That whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like I have to actually give that to myself. Otherwise, it's something that I'm just going to try to outsource through my attractions. Like I'm just activated by this person. Why? They have something that I actually need that I haven't given myself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, I mean, I have this joke that it's Alexandra and I have. It's like, it's not fully developed, and it's not, you know, I have to really think about this and stuff. But, and I think I've shared on here before that it's kind of like I'm actually social dominant. Like I'm just trying to get my social needs met of being seen and wanted and loved and cared about. Alexandra is really sexual dominant because she's trying to get this passion, but I've been doing social through the lens of sexual self-pres, and she's been doing sexual through the lens of social self-pres, and that you know, there's this way that, you know, by having objectified myself, I didn't get social needs met at all, and then looking back at past relationships, being like, there wasn't a relationship; it was empty. Right. Like I was traveling and doing all these things, but I wasn't with anybody, and you know, like I couldn't be with anybody because I wasn't, the social part of me wasn't there. And you know, like Alexandra, you can speak on your situation, but it's a thing where like we sabotage our possibility for getting all our needs met.
There's a thing I'm thinking about launching into.
Go for it.
Let's see if I can articulate here. John, was one of the books I sent you a little book on the human shadow by Robert Bly?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things, I think it's in that book, is the idea that most couples are doing this neurotic polarity where you're taking two half people and putting them together, and that sort of makes this neurotic whole, right? And that there's a wedding that happens, you know, the outer wedding, but then this is in the book, this is how he's putting it metaphorically, but in the basement of the church, another wedding happens. And in that wedding, it's an agreement that, for example, I'm going to be the irresponsible, flighty, you know, unreliable person, and you're going to be the responsible, authoritative, organized person, right? And we come together that way, and it makes a neurotic whole. And then that way, like we said earlier, I don't have to integrate, you know, the opposite qualities because you're doing it.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that gets a bit into what it was like in my like energy field, but I couldn't articulate it quite. Yeah, John and I have a lot of polarity. We have opposite stackings. I am triple attachment. He is triple hexad. There's just like a lot of opposites that we have going on. And one of the risks that comes with that is that, yes, if I'm not integrating my sexual instinct, then I'm sort of keeping John imprisoned to his, or else we don't work anymore. And if I don't articulate, or if I don't integrate my hexad and my location, I'm imprisoning him to his. And if John doesn't learn to adapt, I'm stuck doing all the adapting. Yeah, I'm stuck in my social instinct, which means we just continue to be two separate people. So this thing about owning your own work, owning your own blind spots, learning what your own missing piece is, yes, have it reflected. Like, of course, the polarity that we have is part of why we're attracted to each other. But a big part of why we are working is because we're trying to integrate those within ourselves.
Right.
You
and
know,
that's
like
part of the original attraction, I think,
yes.
is at some underlying level, you're knowing that you need to integrate that opposite thing, but you're setting up this situation, a kind of marriage, if you will, that keeps the thing static and not moving
Right.
at the same time. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah, and with the body last, heart last, which is another polarity here, is that I kind of see like John's very potent heart energy. Yeah, I could absolutely just like outsource that, and just like leave him to be the heart person, and he could leave me to be the body person. But what I think, and maybe this is giving ourselves too much credit, although I think we do naturally do this and, fall off every now and then because we're human still, but I think what it should be in a couple is you can take those polarities and allow that to inspire the missing piece in yourself. Maybe I'm just saying the same
100%.
thing over again. But like John's very potent heart energy inspires me to find it in myself, and inspires me to just like be vulnerable and to just be in this like, to just like allow myself to sit in that space longer. And I think in the opposite sense, like me being such a like body type lump allows John to just access that within himself, which is another kind of liberation we offer each other and ourselves.
It seems like people can go one of two ways with that, where the person you're attracted to that represents these missing pieces, if you're someone who's not motivated to grow and to work on themselves, like it can just be an opportunity just to stay stagnant and not have to change, because why would you? It's like this person's got it covered for me.
Right.
Versus a relationship seems to be an opportunity to this is my instinct of my stacking talking, to transform yourself, to like this chemistry, this attraction, every chemistry. I mean, I look at chapters of my life based on like who I was attracted to and what the before and after of what that taught me about myself. And it can be an opportunity if that the thing that you're attracted to is something that you need to integrate, and you could be a different person if you took on aspects of what they call home, and that feels foreign to you, and get a little bit closer to those qualities and find it in yourself. And that's kind of what happens to couples who are really together. Like over the years, they start to meld together and become more similar sometimes, or they just completely stay separate and they don't. But that can happen in relationships where you do actually start to integrate qualities that the partner represents.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I've been. Did you want to say something?
No, that was it.
Okay. Courtney, we were talking about sexual instinct and relationships and stuff like this, and basically, like, there was an example recently in the group where a new girl, posted making a comment about potentially being a sexual type, and it was very clear from her post aesthetic, everything, that she was sexual blind and social dominant, and people were pointing this out. And she said something like, but being attractive to my partner is the most important thing. And I was like, it was this interesting. At first, I was like, huh, like, not huh, but like, I was like, oh, that's not really it. But then I was like, well, actually, she's probably being completely genuine. That probably is her desire and value, but like operating from a different sensibility of what attraction means and how much that word and how it operates and what it's meant to do and how it's approached, all those kind of things, and what level somebody's understanding a word at and how it's operating within a context. And Courtney recommended a while back this book by a guy named David Data that I've just started. But it's called Intimate Communion, and it seems kind of cheesy, but it's got a lot of good stuff in it. I don't hardly know anything about it, but he's describing 3 levels of a romantic or partnered relationship, where first is, with like heterosexual couples, and I don't know how this applies to non-heterosexual couples, but he talks about like how like the kind of 1950s model of like 2 completely different social functions that men and women have, and how they come together to kind of like complete that social function, but it's completely imbalanced and kind of fucked up and whatever. Where men work and have some independence, but like no emotional life, and women are stuck at home and raising kids and all that kind of stuff, but has no independence or anything. Anyway, the next level up he calls like the 50-50 relationship, which is kind of like his version or his picture of the typical modern relationship where men and women are kind of like complete units in themselves trying to relate. And so like, you know, women will tend to be like have that assertive part down where they're, you know, working and good at their job and, you know, in competitive fields and kind of complete financially and personally and have that aggressive side developed. And then women having and men having more like in touch with their feelings now and all this kind of stuff, but there's like a certain lack of potency, sexual or creative potency in those dynamics, that there's 50-50, so it's like two individuals that sort of orbit each other and then dissolve. And there's something intuitively in that kind of tracks, given like how few relationships I even know that are like successful in the sense of not just people together, but like actually liking each other,
right?
And having passion, and then, you know, the next level he calls intimate communion, which he hasn't really defined that well, but it's all based on cultivating and recognizing the interplay of polarity. And so, like, this conversation is interesting because it's not only this polarity question and trying to identify what polarity and blind spots can even mean. It's like expanded, but that it is like that there's a way to work with them where it's not just a deficiency, but it's also like a creative component of a chemistry. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I will say this about polarities, because I think, David, this is one of your phrases about what the sexual instinct is doing, is creating polarities and looking for polarities, because polarities is what creates magnetism. You need some oppositional energy to create that kind of charge. And in my dating history, I've noticed a pattern of, you know, because if you want to measure attraction, it has dimensionality, it has different facets to it, but it also has strength. And what determines how strong an attraction is the degree of polarity that you might experience. And so, you know, we just did that class, DAA class on J-Lo and this
What's his face?
nothing person that she's with. And they have some polarity, but they're practically the same type. And so a lot of times, you know, what John's speaking to about seeing, you know, couples that are together, a lot of couples get together based on a lot more similarity than polarity. And then they're wondering why there's no spark. Like Josh was speaking to that, like where he was literally dating his exact same type, instinct stacking, trifix, everything. So there's like a comfort there because y'all are doing the same shit, but there's no spark, there's no magnetism. And so my history has been the opposite as a sexual 8, that I'm looking for the fucking biggest hit of attraction I can find. Yeah. So I end up looking for these like super unlikely, you know, like I couldn't have seen it come in sort of attraction, because it means that it was so strong that it hit me out of nowhere, which meant that this someone who was on a really strong polarity, which they're really different from me. Of course, that creates like you have a huge attraction, but you also have a really unstable dynamic because maybe there's not like a middle point. We talked about this in the last episode, where you need some healthy balance of similarity and polarity. But for the sexual blinds out there, what the sexual drive is trying to do is to provoke and find and facilitate these sort of polarities, because in those, the bigger the polarity, the more magnetism there is, the more of that urge to the more attracted you are to that thing. So another one that we could do real quick before, I mean, I think we're running out of time, but is the we looked at the different ORs. We looked at rejection, attachment, and frustration, and Nancy and David were missing rejection, and there were lots of people who were commenting about that. And we just did an episode where, you know, trying to articulate better what rejection was, and I had some follow-up thoughts to that I think might help clarify things a little bit. Dave or John had talked about this episode hasn't gone out yet, that there's a progression of distance with starting with attachment, with this trying to be as close as possible, to frustration, which has got like 1 foot out, 1 foot in, being frustrated, and then rejection, which is like all the way out, like wanting to be separate. And I was thinking about like how rejection sort of represents 2, 5, and 8 represents these sort of withholding, separate, but also, interestingly enough, parental sort of dynamics that those types are looking for. which is parental is already assuming that I'm already outside the family unit, and I can't be acted upon. I have to be the one acting upon others. And so for those listening, if you don't have a lot of rejection in your whole typology, that aspect of, you know, object relations or type perspectives are missing. Because if you have a lot of rejection working in you, you're overdoing this perspective that I'm a separate parental withholding personality that only relates to other people through creating sort of these leverage one-way dynamics. And so what that does to, you know, if I have a lot of rejection, that means that, you know, it's difficult for me to show up in a sort of communal kind of way without seeing myself outside of any sort of like a dynamic. It feels like I'm acting on dynamics, nothing can act on me. So there's more to unpack there, but that's something that clarified like the level of distance that each of the ORs are operating from.
I think it's great. I would maybe tweak some of your language. It's not that I think that rejection doesn't think they can be acted upon, but there is a fear that they'll be acted upon because, you know, like, because it made me think, okay, Hex had this like rejection stance, but the social instinct, what does that look like? And in each case, you know, it's like social 5 becomes like the teacher.
Yes.
You know, social 2 becomes the like teacher mother. You know, and social 8 becomes like the godfather activator. And so there's a certain way that there's a role. Like, I think rejection, they really embody like taking a role more than frustration and attachment do. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's role aspects in those, but it's like, I like the provider thing of providing whatever my my dominant center's quality is. But yeah, it's like the social 5 is like anxious in a certain way that they're going to be gobbled up. You know, and so by being this fount of valuable insight, it's like they have there is a certain not touchableness, you know, there.
Right.
I think 8 is more likely to be like, they're not going to touch me. You know, like, I don't feel like 5 has the robustness sense of to feel like untouchable.
Yeah, the just reflecting on sort of the way I react to things. Yeah, even just things that happen to me that other people feel more offended on my behalf, and it just feels like it's very difficult to feel affected by something that I haven't allowed to affect me. It's like you have to be someone who could affect me. It just feels like everything that person is saying or doing is sort of like less than nothing. I don't even think that phrase really gets at it. It feels like so far away that it feels like they're not even talking about me. I wasn't even there. It's just something that's happening. And if you're not someone who matters to me, you're literally like an NPC. Like you're not, it doesn't matter what you say. I'm like, I could be watching a video game that you think that I'm part of, but I'm not actually in it.
It's wild. I could not like relate less.
I relate to I mean, that's kind of, it sounds like what you were saying earlier, Alexandra, about in the interviews where you're saying something about like the my like social persona is like very pushing away until something opens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But how do you feel in contrast?
I mean, with me as a social type and as a 9, I don't know which one is I don't know, deserves the most credit or something, but Emeka, you specifically said that if you don't give the thing permission to affect you, it just doesn't affect you, even if it should, even if other people recognize that, like, it is a transgression on some level. I feel transgressed upon and affected by everything. Everything. Like,
sensitive woman.
Nothing actually has permission, but also it doesn't fucking matter. I'm affected by everything. Maybe as a social type too, like, because it is like my personhood that I'm tracking and, you know, all of that stuff. But yeah, that is so bizarrely foreign to me.
It's interesting to referencing Jesse's interview with Josh as a social type, as a social 5, how there is this sense of looking for connection points with other people, but also like the sense of her personhood being an abstract thing.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
Yeah, because it feels like you're never actually going to get to her as a person. You're only going to approximate connection through this symbolic object. And so we're going to do a call like social hexatypes just to explore what that looks like, and then maybe a call with social blind attachment types.
That'd be cool.
Just to see how like even the social hexatypes are using the social instinct to reinforce separateness, but still get their, social instinct needs met.
Partly just pulling apart social from attachment is kind of the
Right.
conversation.
That's a good idea.
Right.
Cool.
Let's see. Yeah, I think we covered a lot.
I'm pretty spent, but I don't, we didn't like come up with like concrete things, but I think it was really interesting.
Oh, there's a lot in here. There's a lot that we came up with, even though it might not seem concrete. Like there were some really good nuggets in there.
Yeah. All right. I gotta go. Later, guys.
All right. Bye.
Bye, guys.